Hello students. In the last session we have discussed different mechanical properties of materials. So in that one we have discussed what is meant by strength and what is meant by tensile strength, compression strength and shear strength. Later we have discussed what is meant by stiffness and what is the how we can define plasticity, elasticity and ductility. So lastly we have discussed this ductility. So what is meant by this ductility? See here, the ductility is nothing but we are converting that material into thin wires. So if you are able to convert that one into thin wires very easily, we can say that it is having good ductility property or a ductile material. If you see here, so what we are doing, we are enabling the material to draw into thin wires. So while drawing these thin wires, what we are doing, we are applying some tensile force. So thus, that type of materials are known as ductile materials. And if you take gold, silver, copper, platinum, etc., comes under these ductile materials. So how we will measure the ductility property? So which material is having more ductility and which material is having less ductility, how we can identify? So by calculating the percentage of elongation, we can say that one is having more ductility and one is having less ductility. A metal with good percentage of elongation will have more ductility. So what is meant by this percentage of elongation? If you take length L, so in that L, how much percentage of elongation is possible without fracture, and how much length you can elongate it. If you take initially length L, how much percentage of that length you can elongate, that is known as percentage of elongation. If the percentage of elongation is more, that means you can draw easily into wires, so that the ductility property will be good. So based on the percentage of elongation, we can say that one material is having good ductility or whether it is having less ductility. So based on the percentage of elongation only, we can say that which is having more ductile property or which is having less ductile property. So this is ductility. So till now what we have discussed? We have discussed strength, tensile strength, compression strength, shear strength, stiffness, elasticity, plasticity, and ductility. So now another property is we are having brittleness. Brittleness. So what is meant by this brittleness? This is very important property. So we are having some brittle materials. So what is meant by that brittle material and what is this brittleness property? We have to know. If you see here, so what is meant by brittleness? So the property of breaking without much permanent deformation. So when you apply some load on a material, it will deform, but there is not a considerable deformation. You will not see that deformation. Suddenly it breaks down. So that material is known as brittle material. What it indicates? So sudden fracture will occur. Sudden fracture will occur. So there is no noticeable deformation. So you will not get any permanent deformation, noticeable permanent deformation. So this is very important. See this much permanent deformation. So you will not see any much permanent deformation. When you apply the load, suddenly it breaks, suddenly it fractures. So that property is known as brittleness. So without any permanent deformation, if it fractures, that property is known as brittleness. So if you see, all ductile materials, all non-ductile materials are said to be brittle. So if it is ductile, it can elongate. If it is non-ductile, so automatically what will happen? So suddenly it fractures. So that's why all non-ductile materials are said to be brittle. If it is a ductile, it can extended, it can be elongated, it can have some permanent deformation, noticeable permanent deformation will be there. But in brittle materials, you are not having any noticeable permanent deformation. So it suddenly fractures. For if you take examples, glass and cast iron. If you take glass, if you apply some load on the glass, what will happen? It suddenly fractures. So that type of materials are known as brittle materials. I'm repeating once again. If you see here, so what is meant by brittleness? First, we should understand. So when you apply some load on a material without any permanent deformation, it fractures. That means there is no noticeable permanent deformation or no elongation at all. So that type of property is known as brittleness. If you take glass and cast iron, so when you apply load on the glass or cast iron, what will happen? When you increase the load, suddenly it fractures at some point. There is no elongation or no deformation, permanent deformation will be visible to us. So such metals are known as brittle materials. Okay. So if you take all non-ductile materials, if it is ductile, it can be elongated. If it is a non-ductile, we can say that it is brittle material. So all non-ductile materials are said to be brittle. They, uh, they undergo sudden fracture without any permanent deformation. Okay. So this is regarding brittleness. And if you go for the next property, that is malleability. Okay, what is meant by malleability? So malleability is nothing but, so already we have discussed ductility. In ductility, what we had did, so we are converting the material into thin wires by applying tensile force. So it is nothing but, this malleability is nothing but we are converting the material into thin sheets by applying compressive force. Okay, so what we are doing, we are applying some compressive force and we are making the material into thin sheets. So if the material is having that ability to withstand that compressive force and can be converted into thin sheets, then that property is known as malleability. So malleability is nothing but converting the material into thin sheets by the application of compressive force. If you see here, aluminum, copper, tin, lead, steel, all these can be converted into thin sheets by using this malleable property by applying compressive forces. The ability of a material to be deformed plastically without rupture and a compressive load. If you see here, if you understand this one, we can easily, if you see here, ability of a material to be deformed plastically. Already we know that what is meant by plasticity. Plastically means you should have permanent deformation. So when you apply the compressive load, it should be deformed permanently. It should not regain its original shape. So plastically it should be deformed without rupture. There should not be fracture. There should not be fracture. If it fractures, it is a useless thing. So without fracture, it should be able to convert it into thin sheets when you apply this compressive type of load. Okay. So in ductility, we are applying tensile load. Here in malleability, we are applying compressive load. So if the material is having that ability to deform plastically without fracture, when you apply compressive load, then that property is known as malleability. So the plastic flow of material and a compressive load is known as malleability. If you see here, so here the plastic flow, that means what is meant by plastic flow? So plastically deforming. So plastically deforming when the compressive forces are applied is known as malleability. What we have discussed earlier, that is the same. So material which are highly ductile are also highly malleable. See here, materials which are highly ductile, which can be converted into easily into wires, thin wires, can be easily converted into thin sheets. But the reverse may not be true. That means all malleable materials may not be ductile, but all ductile materials are malleable. So highly ductile materials are highly malleable, but all highly malleable materials are not highly ductile. So the reverse thing is not possible. So I'm repeating once again. If you see here, if you see here, so malleability. So it is ductility we have studied. Now malleability. Ductility is nothing but we are converting the material into thin wires by applying tensile forces without fracture. That property is known as ductility. And similarly, here we are applying compressed forces and we are converting that material into thin sheets. See here, so ability of a material to be converted into thin sheets by the application of compressive loads. So how you are applying the compressive load? See here, the material should be deformed plastically. Plastically means it should permanently deformation should be there. It should not regain its original shape without fracture, without rupture or without fracture under the compressive load. If you apply compressive load and it deforms plastically without fracture, then the ability of that material is known as malleability. The plastic flow of material under compressive force is known as malleability. The plastic flow. So plastic flow means plastically deforming. When you apply compressive force, then it is known as malleability. Material which is are highly ductile are highly malleable. So already we have studied ductile materials. Now we are studying malleable materials. So highly ductile materials are always highly malleable materials, but the reverse may not be true. That means highly malleable materials may not be highly ductile materials. This property is very, very important in making thin sheets. So we should remember 2 points here. First one is ductility property and the second one is malleability property. So in the competitive examinations, they will ask for wire drawing applications, which property is useful for wire drawing applications. So wire drawing applications is nothing but we are converting into thin wires. So that is nothing but your ductility property. So wire drawing applications, we are having ductility property. If you want to for thin sheets drawing, if you want to make a thin sheets, then which property is useful, they will ask in the competitive examination. So which property? Malleable property is useful to convert materials into thin sheets by the application of compressive forces. Here compressive forces we are applying. In the ductility property we are applying tensile forces. We should understand the difference between ductility and malleability. There we are converting into thin wires and applying tensile forces. Here we are applying compressive forces and we are making into thin sheets. Okay, so you should understand these differences clearly. And the next property is, if you see the next property, resilience. Okay, so what is meant by resilience and how it can be measured? Okay, what is the significance of this resilience? We will discuss. If you see here, capacity of a material to absorb energy elastically is called resilience. Elastically means up to elastic limit. I will show you in the diagram. I will show you later. Capacity of a material to absorb energy elastically. So what is meant by resilience? It is the capacity of a material to absorb energy. Up to what? Up to elastic limit. So if you are having some point up to certain point, at that point if it is able to absorb energy, that capacity is known as, that ability is known as resilience. Okay, so if a material, it is the ability of a material to absorb energy up to elastic point is known as resilience. What is meant by proof resilience? So proof resilience is the maximum energy that can be stored in a body up to elastic limit. So how much maximum energy we can store into the material up to elastic limit, that is proof resilience. Here it is the capacity. So within the elastic limit, it can have different values, different energy values, but how much maximum energy that can be stored up to the elastic limit, that is known as proof resilience. Proof resilience. And this quantity gives the capacity of a material to bear shock and vibrations. So where we can use this property, where, how it is useful in our engineering applications. See here, this capacity of the material to store energy is useful in shock and vibrations applications. So if you take your navy ships or submarines, so you may have shock loads, water pressure pulses you will get. So because of that, well, you will get shock waves. We are having NSTL in Vizag. There they will study shock and vibrations. Okay, there we are having shock and vibration center. We are having. Okay, in that one they will study this shock and vibration effects on the submersible bodies like your ships, submarines, torpedoes. Okay, so this resilience is very, very useful in that applications, marine applications. Okay, so many applications we can use this resilience property. Okay, so I'm repeating once again. So what we have studied. So resilience, the next property is resilience. So what is meant by resilience? Resilience is nothing but it is the ability of material to absorb energy up to elastic limit. So up to elastic limit, how much energy it can absorb, that capacity is known as resilience. What is meant by proof resilience? See here, proof resilience is nothing but how much maximum energy it can store, it can absorb into the material before elastic limit. Up to elastic limit, how much energy it can store. Maximum energy. That is energy is known as proof resilience. So this quantity gives capacity of the material to bear shocks and loads. So what is the use of this resilience? Where we can use this resilience property in our engineering applications? So we can use this uh, resilience property in shocks and vibrations applications. So for example, if you take a navy or uh, navy ships or torpedoes or submarines, so they will be in underwater. So you will get some pressure waves onto that one. That is nothing but shock loads, and you are having some vibrations when you. So because of these vibrations, you should not fail how much energy it can absorb. So if the material is able to absorb that energy, so it cannot fracture. So that is it will be safe. So these things can be studied. This property can be useful in such applications. So very, very important property. And I will show you in the diagram. So this last point, if you see, area under stress strain curve up to elastic limit is known as resilience. So I will show you stress strain curve for you. And in that one, area under stress strain curve up to elastic limit will give the resilience value. See here, if you see this one, what you are having, see, this is x-axis and this is y-axis. So I am taking strain on x-axis, stress on y-axis. So you are having a stress strain curve. Here, if I draw stress strain curve for high carbon steel, and if I draw stress strain curve for structural steel, so up to this is the elastic limit point, and for this one, this is the elastic limit point. For high carbon steel, the elastic limit is this one. For structural steel, this is the elastic limit. If you see, if you observe here, say this portion, this is the, if you draw one line from here to here, the area under this curve, this is the area. So this area gives the resilience value for your structural steel. And if you take your high carbon spring steel, so this is the elastic limit. And if I draw one line onto the x-axis, and this is the area, this total area, this is the total area that gives the resilience value for your high carbon spring steel. So in the last point, what we have discussed, the area under the curve, stress strain curve below elastic limit is known as resilience. So you may draw one line from here to here, then that is also resilience. But this is the maximum point. So After this point, you are not having elastic property, you are having plastic property. So at this point, you are having maximum resilience, that is nothing but proof resilience. For this material, this is the proof resilience, and for this material, this is the proof resilience. In this way, we are having, we can find out the resilience values for different materials. I'm repeating once again, the area under the stress strain curve up to elastic limit gives the resilience value. So if you take this stress strain diagram, if you see the stress strain diagram, here we are having strain on the x-axis and stress on the y-axis. So I have drawn the stress strain diagram for structural steel. I am having stress strain diagram for the high carbon spring steel. And if you see, this is the elastic limit for structural steel, and this is the elastic limit for high carbon spring steel. So if I draw one line from this elastic point, limit point to onto the x-axis, so this is the line for this stress strain curve, and this is the line for this stress strain curve. So this area, this shaded area, gives the resilience value for structural steel, and this total area will gives the resilience value for high carbon spring steel. Okay, so this is the property related to resilience, which is very useful in shocks and vibration loads. And okay, next property is toughness. Okay, so we have studied resilience. Now we are going to study toughness. So what is meant by toughness? So it is the amount of energy that can be absorbed before fracture or before the failure takes place. That means up to fracture point in plastic zone also. But in the resilience, what we have taken only up to elastic limit we have taken. Up to elastic limit only we have taken. But in toughness value, we have to take up to fracture. So before fracture, how much energy it can absorb, that ability is known as toughness. Okay, I'm repeating here. See here. So the measure of amount of energy a material can absorb up to actual fracture. So fracture, before fracture, how much energy it can absorb, that is known as toughness, or before failure takes place. So ability to withstand both plastic as well as elastic deformation. But in resilience, you are not having this plastic deformation. You are having only elastic deformation, because we are taking up to elastic limit only in the resilience. But here we are taking up to fracture. That means both elastic deformation as well as plastic deformation will be taken into consideration. Desirable quality of structural and machine parts to withstand shock and vibration. So generally, the structural parts and machine parts are subjected to heavy loads, repeated loads, shock loads, and vibration loads. So this property is very useful in designing the structural and machine parts. So toughness is taken into consideration while designing structural as well as machine parts which are subjected to shock and vibration loads. Okay, here machine parts as well as structural parts are subjected to shock loads and vibration loads. So that's why we have to consider this toughness property into the consideration while designing these parts. Example, if you take manganese, steel, wrought iron, and mild steel, these will have more toughness values compared to other metals. Toughness is related to impact strength. Impact strength means, so it can able to withstand sudden loads. Sudden loads, when you sudden loads acts on it, it can able to withstand, that is nothing but shock load or vibration load. So area under stress strain curve up to fracture, if you see here, up to fracture, area under stress strain curve up to elastic limit is known as resilience, up to fracture is known as toughness. So there is a small difference. Only up to elastic limit if you take, then we can call it as resilience. If you take up to fracture, then we can call it as toughness. Okay, so that is the difference between resilience and toughness. I will repeat once again. See here. See here. We are having toughness. So what is meant by toughness? So measurement of the amount of energy that can be absorbed by a material before fracture. So before fracture, how much energy it can absorb, that ability is known as toughness. So the absorption of energy can be obtained both plastic and elastic deformation. We are not considering only elastic limit, we are considering fracture. So up to elastic limit you are having elastic deformation, and after elastic limit you are having plastic deformation. So both we are considering for calculating this toughness. So it is the amount of energy that can be absorbed by a material up to fracture. So both in elastic deformation as well as plastic deformation. So this is very, very useful in designing structural parts and machine parts which are generally subjected to shock and vibration loads. So the general materials used are manganese steel, wrought iron, mild steel. So these can have good toughness values. So toughness is related to impact strength. Impact strength is nothing but it is the ability of material to resist shock loads or sudden loads. That strength is known as impact strength. And already we have discussed the area under stress strain curve up to elastic limit is known as resilience, and up to fracture is known as toughness. Up to fracture is known as toughness. So this can be asked in the competitive examinations like this. So the stress strain, the area under the stress strain curve up to elastic limit gives, so what it gives? Resilience. The area under stress strain curve up to fracture, what it gives? It gives toughness. So we should be able to understand, we should be able to differentiate resilience and toughness. Up to elastic limit, we can call it as resilience. If it is up before fracture, we can call it as toughness. So we should be able to understand the differences properly. Then only we can have a command on these properties. So if you see the stress strain diagram, if you see the stress strain diagram for toughness, so I'm taking strain on the x-axis and stress on y-axis. And if I draw a stress strain diagram for low carbon steel, medium carbon steel, and high carbon steel, if you see for low carbon steel, this is the fracture, and for medium carbon steel, this is the fracture point, and for high carbon steel, this is the fracture point. I will show you. If you see here, see this is the fracture point for high carbon steel, this is the fracture point for medium carbon steel, and this is the fracture point for low carbon steel. So if I draw a line from here to here like this, so the area under this curve, so this one, the area under this curve, this one gives the toughness value for high carbon steel. And if I draw from here to here, this total area, so this total area like this total area, this total, so we can have curve here. So this total area gives the this total area gives toughness value for medium carbon steel. And if I draw from here to here, so this total area from this point to complete area gives the toughness value for your low carbon steel. So in resilience, we are taking only up to elastic limit, but here in toughness, we are taking up to fracture point. So that is the difference between resilience and toughness. The next property is hardness. So very, very important property. So we should understand it clearly. So what is meant by hardness? So how we can define hardness? So it is the ability of a material. It is the ability of a material to resist scratching like this, scratching and abrasion, erosion, cutting, indentation or penetration. Indentation means just you are having some force. When the force will be applied, the metal moves inside. But penetration means it goes inside the metal. It goes inside the metal. So that is penetration and this is indentation. So if we apply some force on a material, it is able to resist scratching and abrasion and cutting action and indentation or penetration. So if the material is able to all these parameters, then we can say that it is having hardness. So hardness is defined as it is the ability of a material to resist scratching, abrasion, cutting, indentation, penetration. So hard materials are very difficult to machine because cutting is there. So in machining, what we will do, we are removing extra material by machining operation. So by cutting operation. So hard materials are difficult to machine. Hard materials are difficult to machine because they are having that ability to not to cut. Hardness can be measured by many methods. So we are having many methods to measure the hardness values. That is Brinell hardness test, Rockwell hardness test, and Vickers hardness test. So we are having Brinell hardness test, Rockwell hardness test, and Vickers hardness test. So by using these testing methods, we can find out hardness values for different materials. Hardness is a desirable property for cutting tools. If you see here, for cutting tools and ball bearings, whether it is rolling bearings. Okay. So for rolling bearings as well as cutting tools, this property hardness is very desirable property because they should not wear out easily. So if it is having hardness is more, it should not wear out very easily. So for that purpose, it should have hardness value. I'm repeating once again. See here, I'm repeating what is meant by hardness. So hardness is nothing but ability of a material to resist scratching, abrasion, cutting, indentation or penetration. So we should remember these words: scratching, abrasion, cutting, indentation or penetration. Indentation is different and penetration is different. Penetration means entering into that material. Indentation means just pressing that material. Hard materials are difficult to machine because hard materials will have more hardness. So more hardness means it is very difficult to machine. Hardness can be measured by many methods. We are having many tools or many equipment we are having, that is Brinell hardness testing machine or Rockwell hardness testing machine and Vickers hardness testing machine. By using these machines, we can find out the hardness numbers. based as Based on those hardness numbers, we can say that which is hard material and which is soft material. So hardness is a desirable property or not? Yes, it is a desirable property for cutting tools, for making cutting tools, for manufacturing of ball bearings or roller bearings. It is very, very useful where the wear and tear is more. Okay, so if the wear and tear is more, then hardness is a desirable property because cutting tool should not wear out very easily or ball bearing should not wear out very easily. So it should have more hardness value, then only it can withstand those wear and tearing. If you see the next one, See, if you see this one, so this is your material to be tested. This is your material to be tested, and you are having a indent here, ball type indenter. If you see, this is ball type indenter. Indenter means by using that one, we are apply the force onto the metal. So I am taking this indenter and I am touching that indenter onto the surface of the metal, which is going to be tested, and applying the load. So when I apply load, what is happening? If you see here, you are getting some indentation like this. Based on this indentation diameter, we can calculate the hardness values. So by using Rockwell hardness or Brinell hardness or Wickel hardness testing machine, we will find out the hardness value for different materials by using these machines. So this is a general procedure, but in each procedure, you are having different testing procedure. Those things we will discuss in the testing of materials session. Okay, so this is called indentation. If you see here, some material is pressed inside. When you apply the force, that is called indentation. That is called indentation. Okay, so this is a ball indenter. The shape of the indenter is ball type. So you may use different types of indenters: ball indenter, diamond indenter, cone indenter, like that. You may have different indenters, but this is a ball indenter we are using here. See, this is the hardness testing machine. So you are having a platform. On that one, you will keep the test specimen. You will keep the test specimen here. See, this is the test specimen. You are having a base here, and you are having an indent here. So from that, you may have different types of indenter: steel ball indenter or diamond cone indenter. Or so you are having a gauge here to know the load, how much load you are applying. So you will apply the load, and after some time you will be having a testing procedure for that one. So we are having a step-by-step procedure how to find out the hardness values for different material. So we will discuss those testing procedure in the coming sessions, but here only just I'm showing the equipment for finding out the hardness test, hardness values. See, next property is creep. So what is meant by creep? It is very, very important. This creep, see, it is, the definition is, we have to understand the definition properly. If you see, here, we are having creep is defined slow and progressive deformation. Slow and progressive deformation with constant, with the time, with constant load. Constant stress means constant load. So we should remember these words. So we should understand what it means. So it is a slow and progressive deformation of a material with the time, with respect to time, at constant load. So what it means, you will take one material and you will place some load on it, and if the time prolongs, what will happen? There may be some deformation, slow deformation. It may not be visible, okay, but the time passes, you may see that deflection, you may see the deformation. That type of deformation is known as creep. See, if you see the parameters, it is a slow and progressive deformation. It is a slow initially, so you will not get deformation very fastly. You will get slow deformation, but it is progressive in nature. So firstly, it will deform some a small quantity, and later it will be increased, and it will be increased, it will be increased, like that. That means it is a progressive deformation. The deformation will be increased with respect to time, but if you see here, the load will not change. The load will not change. That means it is constant. Stress is constant. So slow and progressive deformation with respect to time. As the time changes, the deformation changes, but the load will not change. Load is constant. For example, if you take a wooden bookshelf, If you take a wooden bookshelf, when you keep the books, initially it is straight, it is parallel like this. But when the time prolongs, what will happen after some years or after some months? What will happen? The wooden shelves will become like this, like this. Why? Because of progressive deform. The load of the books is not changed, but it is deforming with respect to time. As the time prolongs, what is happening? You are getting deformation. So that property is known as creep. Slow and progressive deformation with respect to time with constant load, constant stress or constant load. Okay, so that property is known as creep. So creep phenomenon is high at elevated temperature. As the temperature is increased, creep will be more. As the temperature is increased, creep will be more. So that's why this is very, very important in power generation turbines. In power generation equipment, this creep is very, very important. At high temperatures, due to prolonged loading, constant stress at longer time, material may undergo permanent deformation below elastic limit. Below elastic limit due to creep. So below elastic limit only it will elongate because of this creep property. At elevated temperature, at higher temperatures, what will happen? Because of the constant load only, the materials will get deflected. Slow and progressive deformation you will see. So that property is known as creep. So that's why this creep property is applicable or very useful in the design of equipment or tools, or we can say machinery, where it is used at elevated temperatures, high temperatures. Then we can this creep property will be applicable there. So while designing those components, we have to concentrate on the creep also. Okay, I'm repeating once again. I'm repeating. So creep is nothing but it is a slow and progressive deformation. Slow and progressive means so it slowly deformed, progressive step by step deformation will be there, but time is constant. With respect to time and stress, your load is constant. Time is not constant because time prolongs, but your load is constant. So how we can define creep? Creep is nothing but slow and progressive deformation with respect to time under constant load or constant stress. So where it can be used? Creep plays a vital role at highly elevated temperatures. At elevated temperatures, the even though even below the elastic limit, it may elongate, it may deform. So for such applications, we have to consider this creep property while designing. Okay, so next, if you see the creep curve, strain and time. If you draw a diagram for strain versus time, so what is happening? So after some time, so slow progressive deformation, slowly, if you see, initially it is slowly, what is happening? It is slowly progressing with respect to time. So slowly progressing with respect to time, and after some time, so you are having primary zone, secondary zone, and tertiary zone. That means tertiary zone after failure. In the tertiary zone only, you are having failure. So when you draw strain versus time, so as the time increases, so the elongation is increasing slowly, progressively. So this property is known as creep. I'm repeating once again. So if you draw the stress versus time diagram, so the elongation is slowly, progressively increasing. Progressively means it is increasing, not decreasing. So it is increasing slowly, slowly. So you are having primary zone, you are having secondary zone like this. So it is increasing. After some time, it may fail. But if you see the time is increasing, your elongation is increasing. But here, stress is constant, that is, load is constant. So Even though load is constant, what is happening? You are getting uh, elongation will be there. That deformation is there, progressive and slow. So next is fatigue. So what is meant by fatigue? Okay, so we will discuss here. What is meant by fatigue? So determines the behavior of a material when subjected to cyclic loads and repeated loads and reversal loads. Here, cyclic loads means here repeated and reversal. Repeated and reversal. If you take one rod and if you bend like this and if you bend like this, so you are applying in one direction, you are applying in this way, in one step you are applying in this way. So you are applying repeatedly, you are applying, and in reversal, once you are applying compressive force and once you are applying tensile force. So when a material is subjected to repeated and reversal stresses, then failure may occur. That type of failure is known as fatigue failure. If it is able to withstand that repeated and reversal stresses, then we can say that it is having fatigue strength. So fatigue strengths are very, very useful when we apply repeated and reversal type of loads. So failure of a metal is below the ultimate strength. Here, because of this repeated and reversal stresses, the failure may occur before the ultimate strength due to this fatigue. So the maximum stress at which the material will operate indefinitely without failure is known as fatigue limit. At what limit? At what limit it can operate without failure? That limit is known as fatigue limit or endurance limit. So these two are very, very important in the examination point of view. They may ask define fatigue or define fatigue limit or endurance limit. Fatigue limit or endurance limit. Okay, so we should able to define what is fatigue and what is fatigue limit and what is endurance limit. Okay, so what is fatigue? Fatigue is nothing but when you apply cyclic loads, that is nothing but repeated and reversal loads, then it may fail before the maximum strength of that material, that is nothing but your ultimate strength of the material. Okay, because why? Because it is failing because of this repeated and reversal loads. So what is meant by this endurance limit or fatigue limit? So that is nothing but maximum stress at which it can be operated without failure. That limit is known as fatigue limit or endurance limit. I will show you in the diagram. See, if you see the diagram, so I am taking cycles. Cycles means repeated loads 10 to the power of 4, 10 to the power of 5, 10 to the power of 6, 10 to the power of 7 on x-axis, and I am taking stress in on y-axis. If I see the fatigue, if I draw the fatigue curve will be like this. See here, if the cycle is less 10 to the power of 5, so it can fail at a higher stress. But when the cycles are more, what is happening? With very low stresses only, it can fail. Very low stresses only, it can fail. So if you take 10 to the power of 6, so this is the stress value. I will show you. See, this is for 10 to the power of 6. This is the stress value. See here, this is the stress value. If you take 10 to the power of 7, this is the stress value. For this one, you may have here. So as the cycle is increasing, as the number of cycles are increasing, what is happening? The stress at which it fail decreasing. So at lower stresses only it can fail. So that is the importance of fatigue in the designing of components. So that's why we should understand this fatigue components as it is useful when the material is subjected to repeated and reversal type of loads. Okay, so based on that one, we can take a value at which it can operate safely without failure, that is known as fatigue limit or endurance limit. Okay, with this one I am closing here. So in the next session coming another properties we will discuss.